Anyway, Medvedev has won his first Masters 1000 title on clay. Clayvedev. Does that make him a French Open title challenger? As Ghosty suggests here, Clayvedev, the new king of clay. Well, we've lost the king of clay, seemingly, at least for now. Is Medvedev going to take over and win the next 14 French Opens? No, but I thought the first set was intriguing, but I thought the second set really got really interesting because basically Rune decided to arrive and he managed to break his opponent's serve a few times, but he had his chances. He had his moments, but Medvedev holds and wins 7-5, 7-5. So, who's more likely to win the French Open, Holger Rune or Daniil Medvedev? He is indeed just a toddler. And we're going to hear from Daniil Medvedev right now. Let's see what he's got to say. Oh, yeah, he never won a match in Rome. I always want to believe in myself. I want to win the biggest tournaments. Honestly, though, I didn't believe I would win a Masters 1000 on clay in my career. Never won a match in Rome until this year. Now he's won the title. Didn't have too many tantrums this year. Well, of course, if you go on to win the title, that helps. He felt so good coming into this tournament. I don't know what's going on, but I feel amazing. But you've got to play the toughest opponents in the world. And now I've proved to myself and everyone else that I'm capable of doing it. Both of us were maybe a little bit nervous at the beginning. We were just doing the basics right. But I'm happy at the end of the second set that I could just peak a little bit before he did. But the beginning of the second set, he stepped things up. Hey, Vansh.
Hello there, John.
How are you? What are your immediate thoughts on that?
So yeah, I mean, immediate thoughts. Hang on a second. My microphone is all weird. Let me just fix this.
No problem. Medvedev looking happy. Medvedev had never won a match in Rome until 7 days or 10 days ago. Had never won a match in Rome. Now he's won a Masters 1000 there. Unbelievable.
Yeah, look, I mean, I've always been a believer that Medvedev can adapt his game to the clay. He showed it in early part of 2019. In 2021, he seemed very miserable out there, complaining about the surface until Roland Garros, where he made the quarterfinal. But, I mean, he has qualities in his game that would seem to work well on clay. He's incredibly consistent. Really, the court coverage is second to none, and he's improved so many things in his game this year, starting with the forehand, the amount of pace and power he's bringing off of both wings, his ability to slide in the forehand corner. I mean, he always had the big serve, and I think he won over 50% of his return games at one point this week until the semis, and then so I just feel like there's so many things in his game that can work well on clay, and it was all in his head. The entire narrative about Medvedev and his clay court game, it was all in his head. It's pretty much generated all by himself. Like there was no evidence really. Like you have all the evidence you need this week because, he was just able to adapt his game. I think he only dropped one set this whole week, and in this match against Rune, he was 5-3 down in that second set, and he just would not go away. And Rune, you could see, was just trying so hard to finish points. Didn't want to engage in many of those wrong physical rallies that Medvedev likes to extend. And Rune was trying to finish and using the drop shot, coming forward, trying to finish at net, like serve big, but it just wasn't working because he just didn't have it physically. And he needs that extra little gear that he's still kind of missing. That has me question a little bit if he's ready to win a slam just yet, because
Okay.
he can do pretty much everything on the court. It's just a question of shot selection, choosing the right one, and being physically and mentally engaged the entire time. Because he had stretches in this match, Runa, where he was incredible, like where he won 12 out of 16 points, or he was able to get
Yep.
back in the second set. He had chances, and he didn't have many chances actually in the first set, um, but certainly, and then Mortoglu was telling him on the change of ends to show more patience, uh, to be willing to suffer a little bit more. And then once he was willing to do that, he won a 38 shot rally, and
Yeah.
it was actually Medvedev who started to feel the pressure of finishing. And then that's when Rune went on a surge and won 3 games in a row, but he just couldn't quite sustain it, and that has to be really frustrating for him because he had opportunities to finish when he was serving for the set, and then this final could really have been up for grabs. But yeah, I mean, credit where credit is due. Now he's world number 2, as Mario points out, number 2 seed at Roland Garros. He was 12 in the world after the Australian Open. So this is this. I mean, we have to start talking about him now as a real contender to finish the year number 1, along with Djokovic and Alcaraz, because like this does change things.
Has he just overtaken Novak to world number 2?
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
So Novak's world number 3.
Yeah, so that leaves us with the possibility of a Carlos versus
Carlos and
Novak
Novak in the same half.
semis. So that changes the complexion completely. And now, yeah,
It
I mean, Medvedev has
does.
a big lead on in the race as well, number 1. And
But
oh,
that French Open draw has just taken on another dynamic.
yeah,
Now, I do think you're right. We do probably have to think of Medvedev as a bit more of a serious contender after the last 10 days or so in Rome. But yeah, that changes things very much so for that draw. But we'll talk about that some other time, I think, especially as we'll probably be covering the draw live on the channel on Thursday. I want to get back to today. I see this tweet here from you, Vanch. 20 titles in 20 different cities for Daniil Medvedev now. 6 different Masters 1000 title. And he's had just such a great year, as you highlight here in this tweet. But regarding the match itself, there were sort of 2 or 3 phases for me. The first set, neither could really make an impression on either serve for about 10 or 11 games. I think we had 2 break points in that first 10, 11 games. And that was largely because Medvedev did a double fault at one point, meaning he had to face 2 break points. He saved them, though, by getting his first serve in, which is part of the narrative for me for this match, that when Medvedev was getting his first serve in, he was fine. And he was winning almost all of those points. And in fact, it also reminded me of how Rune just couldn't get a hold on Bublik's serve a few weeks ago in Madrid. It was just every time Bublik was getting a first serve in, Rune had no answer for it, no matter what he could do. And at times, in fact, pretty much throughout the first set, that's how it was. However, and Medvedev took his chance, had 1 break point in that first set, took it. So we go into a second set, and now we're also seeing certain things going on with Rune in that he's being far more aggressive on the second serve, and he's taking his chances as well. He got to love 40 very, very quickly as a result of some really good returns on the Medvedev serve at the beginning of the second set. We're also seeing this point, which I made to Jack before the match, which was, we know the template against Medvedev of serve and volley, particularly on a hard court, but also on a clay court, where this is a template that Novak set out in Paris-Bercy, I think, in 2021. And we've seen other players pull it off very successfully, notably Carlos in the Indian Wells final this year. The only thing is that I said to Jack is I just don't know if I have the same level of faith in Rune at the net that I do have in those 2 players we just touched on, but even someone like Jan-Lennard Struff, who was amazing at the net against Carlos a few weeks ago in Madrid. And I do think a couple of times at the net, Rune got exposed today. Now, whether that was just a bad day or a generic point regarding Rune. And Rune had chances as well. It was, I think, a forehand he put long, really easy forehand he had quite close to the net. Anywhere in that net region, I think he won less than half the points at the net overall today, which also, when you're coming to the net, you're probably in charge of the point, and therefore you should be winning more than half of those.
Yeah, I mean, certainly we saw Sinner struggle with that in Miami. And this was somewhere in between. It wasn't Carlos levels of proficiency, but it wasn't Sinner's level. it was maybe somewhere in between. I think he's 13 for 26 at the net, if I have the stats correct.
Okay, so it's 50%. Yeah.
So 50%, but a lot of those volleys, I think 3 of them came in one game where he was up 2-1 in the second set, and he just either didn't do enough with them, or he was maybe wary of Medvedev sort of anticipating it, or he didn't drop it short enough. And it's like it's those. I think he'd sort of back himself against most in that area. I do think Runa is more proficient at the net than most, but I just didn't see how. I I felt like he felt like he had to do a little bit more, and he just wasn't quite able to execute, because he also felt like that was the only way out of this match, because he wasn't winning many of the longer rallies. I think the rallies that went over 9 shots, Medvedev had a distinct advantage, and so it was all about keeping it short, and basically he had to dominate the 0 through 4 or the 5 through 8, and he kind of wasn't really able to do it either, because I don't think he had his best serving day. Like I think he made under 50% first serves in, which
Okay.
is not going to get it done
No.
against the quality of returner that Medvedev is. Especially on these slow courts, I also felt like the heavier conditions really favored Medvedev in this matchup, and actually he did do a better job protecting his second serve, Runa, 63%, because he was being way more aggressive with it, and Medvedev wasn't actually hurting him much on the second serve return. But uh, yeah, and then once Medvedev, I felt like in several big moments, Medvedev came up clutch with his first serve, like 5-all 30-40, for example, in the second set, ace down the
Yeah.
tee. Runa had no read on it. I also felt like maybe at times Runa dropped his forehand a little bit too short,
Yeah.
and he was maybe getting exposed a little bit, because Medvedev has upped his forehand speed, and he's actually playing more offensive than some players are expecting. Because before, I think, particularly last year, he was more of a massage artist, where he would just sort of punch the ball around on his forehand, redirect really well, but he couldn't really generate a lot of his own pace. Now I feel like he's really doing that. He's actually putting a lot more topspin, a lot more loop, and it's become like a real significant weapon. Like I mean, against Tsitsipas, he was averaging over 80 miles per hour on that forehand. So I was like, and he was doing that sort of. You kind of expect that on faster courts, he'd get more help from the court in doing so. But man, I just feel like even on clay in heavier conditions, with uh, where he doesn't have to slide as much, maybe because it's been wet and it's a lot slower. It's like playing in mud, basically. It's almost more hardcore esque with the dirt. But it's yeah, it's amazing though that he actually won this title.
I want to get a rundown, Vanch. You don't need to give me an explanation. You just tell me your 5 favorites for the French Open, and in the order that you think they are right now. If you were to do a power rankings, or your 5 favorites, who would they be?
Uh, it's very very close between Carlos and Novak for me.
Mhm.
For number one, but I'll give a slight edge to Carlos. So I'll say Carlos 1, Novak 2, 3. I would have gone with I think I'll go with Runa still. I'll still
Yeah.
go with Runa. And then fourth, I'll go with fourth. I still will go with Tsitsipas, because I'm backing the pedigree. And
Yeah.
then number 5, I think now I'll have to go with Medvedev.
Yep. You know what? I think I have exactly the same. Funny enough, each one, it's a fine margin between each one.
Yeah.
But in a way, maybe today's result, as you said, Rune, for me I was pretty comfortable about my first 3 being Alcaraz, Djokovic, Rune.
Mhm.
Before going into that final, but that final has put more doubt for me on Rune, for sure.
Yeah.
Listen, Vanch, I wanted some hot takes from you. I'm really pleased you gave them to me. Do you want to add anything else regarding today's final?
No, I think I covered it.
I think you did. I think you did. I've shared your Twitter already. So, Vanch, just remind us of your Twitter handle.
Twitter is at VanchV2K.
Cool. So give Vanch a follow on Twitter if that's where you're at. And make sure you hit this like button and subscribe to the channel. Vanch, of course, also has a podcast, which is just on the verge of... Have we had the first episode yet of Igor and Carlos?
Yep, we had the first episode of the Iga and Carlos tennis show after Madrid, and actually David and I will be releasing another one this upcoming week on Rome and just our general thoughts of matchups for those two and probably potential French Open talk as well.
Great. So make sure you give the Iga and Carlos show some love, both on the Twitter account, but also as a podcast as well. And I think there may even be plans to turn it into something on YouTube. Both of those players are at slightly different moments in terms of the French Open, but I'm sure you and Damien will be expanding on that very, very shortly. Vansh, thanks for stopping by.
Yeah, thanks a lot, John. Good stuff.
Thank you. Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. And I'll play us out with the usual video. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell so you don't miss out on